So naturally, I jumped into Ashtanga with my full energy, and I had a great fortune of having some really access to really good teachers in San Francisco.
Mm.
Tim Miller, obviously, regularly coming to town. Another teacher, Dominic Corigliano, was
Oh,
coming
right.
to
He was a teacher,
town.
was he? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a couple living in San Francisco who are teaching out of their apartment called Nikki and Eddie, Eddie
Yeah.
Modestini,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nikki
Yeah.
Doan.
Mm-mm.
Also at the studio that I was attending, there was a guy named Johnny Smith
Mm.
who gave me a lot of attention. It was great because, with Nikki and Eddie, I would go over their place and there would be like, at the most, maybe several students. So it was like
Right.
two teachers, 1 to 3 students, and just full power adjustment every single, pose.
You loved it.
And
Didn't it? It
I
just
loved
strikes.
it. Just
I
so
just remember.
raw and
Did
so,
you were you the teacher that introduced Kino to Ashtanga?
yes, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I
When I
heard
was
that
teaching
somewhere. I
at
thought, yeah,
Jivamukti in New
yeah.
York.
Well, that's a claim,
That
isn't
was,
it? That's come on. We got to mention
yeah, that's good.
that.
See?
Carry on with. Yeah,
Look,
I know.
everybody.
See? Yeah, yeah. Look how good he is. Anyway, it's a great story. Carry on. All right. So you did that. All right. I mean, I'm really enjoying getting to know you in this way, having not really talked. I mean, it looks at.
Yeah, right.
I could hardly find
That's
any interviews.
interesting.
I could
Tell
hardly
us
find
the
any
story.
interviews at all about with you online.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
this is my research on the go, as it were. Right. So
Yeah, so
okay.
also, like, it was great because all of my teachers at the time, of course, were, had really, really positive many experience in India. So they were just constantly encouraging me, like, you have to go to Mysore, you have to go to Mysore, you have to go to Mysore. So in '95, I made my first trip to Mysore. And it was such an adventure during that time, of course, because, I mean, there wasn't that many people going. Nobody really had there was no real instruction on how to get there. Like, I
Mm.
remember flying into Chennai and being completely confused. First, I was flying on Singapore Airlines, and I was sitting I was, of course, connecting through Singapore. So I was in Singapore sitting, waiting for the flight to India, and a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, are you going to Mysore?" I was like, "What? How does she know I'm going to Mysore?" And of course, she just saw that I had a yoga mat, and so just assumed that I was going to go to Mysore. And it turns out that was, she ended up being my guide getting me to Mysore. I don't know how I would have gotten to Mysore otherwise, because I was completely lost at that point. But her name, Louisa Sears. So another,
Yeah. Yeah.
long time
Yeah.
senior student. And she guided me all the way to Mysore. And so first time in Mysore in 1995, just epic experience, like life-changing in almost every single fashion. This, of course, was the time of the old small shala, coming in to meet Guruji and having him tell me to come to class at 4:30 in the morning. Now, this 1995 was also significant from the fact that this was the year of Guruji's 80th birthday party. So I was able to be there during the time of his birthday party. Of course, this was in the summertime. And what made that so significant, of course, for me was the fact that most of all the senior teachers of any note were there in Mysore. So I was like, in this small room that, of course, only fit 12 students mat to mat. And on one side of me was Tim Miller. On the other side of me was Richard Freeman. Over in the corner was Eddie Stern. All these, like, it's like the all-star team, being a new Ashtanga student and just having all these senior practitioners there was just particularly awesome.
Amazing. Right.
And of course, not knowing at all what to expect and what this was all about, going to the shala 4:30 in the morning, waiting outside, hearing, I mean, I wish somebody had made a sound recording of the shala during these early days, because it was just this surreal type of soundscape. For me, it sounded like there was a bunch of wounded animals in there. You'd hear these like moans, like, oh, and there'd be people, crying, and all this kind of like weird body fluid sounds. And, it's just like, what is going on in there, And of course, with Guruji's method, like him being 80 years old, he was still kind of in his youthful, energetic phase, So like, it's funny to me how in kind of modern yoga community now, it's like, largely speaking, there's this extreme level of care and even trepidation with regard to pain and injury, right? So you go into most modern style yoga classes, and of course they're talking a lot about you have to have proper alignment because you have to avoid the injuries. If you have an injury, then it means something's wrong, right? That's kind of philosophically a lot of modern yoga classes carry that kind of message. And here you go to Mysore, especially in 95, and it looks like Guruji's actually trying to destroy people. Like taking raw beginners who you look at and you say, there's no way that person is going into a lotus position, half lotus, much less full lotus. And there he is on the floor with his full energy and strength, trying to put people into full lotus position. So it was a regular occurrence that there is these like dislocations happening and all kinds of like horrific style pain, and of course this is during the time when he's kind of like chuckling and telling people, no, don't say injury here, say only opening. You're having opening, not injury, and of course you're saying under your breath that this is not an opening. This is obviously an injury.
And that was,
right?
It was your experience, or what did you think of that? How did you progress with that style of teaching? And how long were you staying there at this time?
Well, this was, during most of my trips to India during this time, it was a minimum of 3 months, oftentimes staying up to 6 months at a time, and having like many back-to-back trips. Like during the late 90s, I think I would come back to the States for 3 or 4 months at a time, make enough money, and then go back for 6 months, So it was, and of course, this was just great because also was a time before there was real popularity of going to Mysore. So there was most times, maybe a maximum of 5 to 10 people in the room at a time, So, but I came from a, Asian-based experience, understanding of practice. So it was like absolute obedience and no questioning of the teacher's authority. So I just kind of went along with it, I mean, one of my most significant experiences from the early days was like, after I'd been there a few weeks, and like one of the first things that kind of shocked me was that he was like, from the get-go, no matter how stiff your back seemed, he was like trying to get you to grab your ankles in a back bend. So from the first day, he's pulling my hands, trying to get me to grab my ankles. And I'm like, what? There's no way I'm doing this. But he kept doing it, so I kept going along with it.
Yeah.
And after about 2 weeks there, in class, I had like one of the worst experiences of back pain I ever had. Like my back felt like I seriously ruptured some disc or something, but I was like, I couldn't, like, it was the most intense pain I ever felt before, And naturally I go to Guruji and I say like, I think I need to take a break or a rest because my back is very painful. And he, of course, said, no, don't worry. You practice. Don't worry. Don't work. And going back to class, not only was he like not more gentle, he seemed to be more aggressive with me, So during the next 2-3 weeks, I barely slept because I was anticipating the morning coming, because it was
Yeah.
so painful just to go into the class. I mean, I couldn't really bend forward. I could only stand or lie down. I couldn't really bend forwards. And, I was just kind of barely making it through. And every single day was this just extreme pain. But I kept going because that's what my teacher said to do, right? Now, after 2 to 3 weeks, I woke up one morning and the back pain was completely gone, like completely gone.
So strange.
And for the rest of my life, that back pain, which I had been experiencing, once or twice a year going out to extreme degree, went away and it never came back. So it was this kind of miraculous healing. So obviously that made me like, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, this is like the first introduction to, because in the West, we grow up with this idea that we need the medical system, right? Especially with something like that. You cannot do without the drugs. You cannot do without the procedures. You cannot do without the surgeries. You need this. And our whole society and whole medical system seem to reinforce that. But here I was doing this weird practice in this weird place, obviously thousands of miles from home. And I was healed. Like, my back pain was healed. Like, I couldn't believe it.
So you think he saw something, or he was doing something particular? Because he was doing that, I remember, to everyone, right? I mean, he was kind of cranking everyone, and not everyone had the same healing story as you did.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it seemed like he's just completely like didn't have a clue. Other times it seemed like he just knew things.
Right. Which is, possible. Both could be said to be
one
true.
Time I asked him, like, I have as part of my shoulder surgery, I got like a 2 or 3 inch metal pin inserted into my right shoulder.
Okay.
So I was having a little bit stiffness on that side, and I was like asking Gurji, like, what should I do about this pin in my shoulder? He just looks at me and says, you take it out. I like, take it out? Like, he obviously is like, he doesn't understand what that means. I was like going in and getting this really intrusive surgery to take this metal pin out, and I have no idea what's going to happen to my shoulder afterwards. And yet afterwards he said, yes, after you take it out, you do no back bending for 1 year, and then should be no problem. Like, what? Where does he get this information from? He must, like, does he know something? There was always
but you didn't take it out. You didn't, right?
No, I didn't take it out.
No. Okay, so we never know how that might have transpired.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
Still have the metal pin. Yeah.
Okay.
So that happened, with numerous kind of things, like I remember one time Sharat was backbending me. At this point, like, they're doing these, backbending you and walking your hands up your legs and trying to get you to grab above your knee and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, I had my left side went in, and my right side's a little stiffer because of the metal pin, and he just yanked my arm in, and my elbow dislocated.
Right.
Things like that. But those kinds of things happen all the time. I remember one time in third series adjustment, with the leg behind the head, sitting on top of me and having my knee open up in a dramatic way. The sound from the knee opening was so dramatic that a guy in the back row, I was in the front row, a guy in the back row said the sound was so, it affected him so much he went in the bathroom and threw up.
But you were adamantly in belief of that this system was just kind of always transformative, right? You had complete faith in it.
I was totally convinced that the system was like brilliant. Like,
and now, did that change as you went through your years in Mysore? And did it? I mean, are you still, or were you, and are you still teaching like that?
Well,
I mean, because you better have good insurance if you are.
The system as much as I ever did, but of course you can't, like, just go completely against the current sort of narrative or culture in the classes. If I were to teach like him back then, as I secretly kind of want to, then obviously you're not going to be a teacher for very long, if people are kind of having these intensive experiences with you.
Yeah, you could call it that. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So naturally, I'm much more gentle than he ever was.
And how did yeah.
But there's something profound that happens when you
Right.
go through experiences like that, and then you experience self-healing, like the real power of the practice. Like, you realize like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I don't need any of that. I don't need to go to the doctor. I don't need x-rays. I don't need any of these drugs that they are handing out so freely. I don't need the procedures, the surgical procedures that they say are so important. I don't need any of those things, because if I just practice yoga and live in a particular way, everything heals itself, right? So, and this kind of carries forth a theme that started fairly early in my life. Like I, at the age of, for example, like at the age of 25, I realized like, you know what? Like, why does everybody use soap and shampoo? It's completely unnecessary. Not only is it not necessary, it seems to not be good for your health, So at age 25, I stopped using soap and shampoo, and I haven't used soap or shampoo, since that age. So for, close to 40 years, I haven't used any soap or shampoo.
Wow. What do you use to wash?
Just water.
Just
Water's
water.
great.
Just water.
Water's
Nothing
amazing.
else.
Yeah.
Deodorant? Do you
Nothing.
put deodorant? Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, I'm glad we're separated by a video
I
screen.
like to rub coconut oil on my body because it feels good and it smells nice. But I don't, there's no need for any fragrances. There's no need for any soaps. There's no need for any of that. Like,
Well, so it's definitely a radical
that
philosophy you're
continued on to,
espousing here. Yeah.
I see the medical system, I see doctors as largely unnecessary. So I haven't had health insurance. I haven't gone to see a doctor in years, And even like in my 30s, I stopped going to the dentist. Like I realized like if I stop going to the dentist, I'm gonna probably have less issues. And it's true. Like, when I used to go to the dentist on a regular basis, they'd regularly find cavities and have to do like, cavity drilling and filling and all that kind of stuff. But when I stopped going to the dentist, all of a sudden I stopped having cavities. Like, like maybe everything that they say we need, we don't need. And that's kind of it's kind of yogic message, right?